What is going on, everyone? So in this week's video, I want to talk about some of the lessons learned from my recent fall trip design. It's one of the things I do. I like to look back at the trip and reflect on things and learn from mistakes and then find ways to make it better on the next trip. Now that I am pursuing this as my career, I do want to make sure that the experiences in the field are as enjoyable as possible so I can stay as productive as possible, especially when some of these areas are, rather long drive from home. And so I can make the most of these opportunities. So for a little over a year now, I have been wearing a Fitbit every single day. And I find it to be interesting because I can look at the stats for just general health reasons, but also get back from a trip and analyze the stats and everything that goes along with that. So just as a comparison, yesterday I decided to go for a little bit of a longer run than usual. So normally I'll get up really early, go for a morning run, and maybe 4 miles, 6 miles, somewhere in that range is my usual route. But for whatever reason yesterday, I decided to go for a 10-mile run, which is the longest I've ever gone for a run. And so since I wear my Fitbit and I have the stats from that, it was just under 15,000 steps for that run. And I burned just over 1,200 calories on that particular run. And then by the end of the day, I had burned almost 3,400 calories. So my most active day this year was the final day of my summer backpacking trip. I had 40,309 steps. And I can guarantee you that by the end of that day, I was counting every single one of those steps. That was right about at my limit. By the end of the day, I had burned 6,151 calories, and I hiked for 19.23 miles, according to my Fitbit. So that was an intense day. And that also included, the big pack on my back and some pretty significant elevation gains to get out of the canyon where I was. So yeah, that was right about my limit. If we look at the numbers from this year's trip design, so I was in the field for 10 days. Each day was somewhere between about 15,000 and 20,000 steps. And so if you think about it, if you're at home, you're not on a photography trip or anything like that, but if you're doing 20,000 steps a day for 10 days in a row, even if you're not doing photography, nothing else like that, that's a lot of work. And according to the Fitbit, I was burning somewhere between 3,500 and 4,000 calories a day. And I'm active from before sunrise all the way to right about sunset. I usually get up about 2 hours or so before sunrise on these trips and just kind of get out and just enjoy the morning before setting to work, wherever it is I'm trying to find to take a picture of. So when I go on these trips, the convenience of a hot, fast, tasty meal is really, really big. And so most of the time, I do have the backpacking food. I supplement it with other food as well, but these are very satisfying when you're out in the field. So this right here, for example, is the breakfast skillet. So I usually have these in the morning. An entire container here is going to be 510 calories. Here's lasagna. The whole package is going to be just shy of 700 calories. And then here's one, kind of a rice and stuff. This one is 570 calories. And the thing about these meals is that they are very filling. You have one of those, you are stuffed. It's very satisfying, you're very full, but you're not really getting a lot of calories. So it's not a very calorie dense food. And after a while, what happens is I start to run a calorie deficit on these trips. So I'll have granola bars, I'll have some other stuff as well. But you eat food, you're satisfied by the food, it fills you up, but then just day after day, you kind of become a zombie after a while. And that's really what happened on this trip. By the 10th day of the trip, my legs just did not want to move. They were just rebelling against me. I lost 7 pounds, and I think a good chunk of that was muscle. Because when I got back from the trip, I really couldn't go for my normal morning run for about a week or so after I got back from the trip. So it just started to really deplete my resources. So one really important lesson is I need to stuff my face with more food, more calorie dense food, stuff like peanut butter and things along those lines, because I think that will give me the energy I need to continue to function. Because as much as it is, kind of pursuing photography as an art, this really is, it's like a sport at a certain point, because it takes a lot of physical energy to get out there, especially lugging around an 8x10 view camera and all the other stuff that goes along with it. Another thing too is I really do need to rest more on these trips. And I always tell myself, like on the fifth day or so, I'm just gonna take a rest day, but that's so hard to do on a fall trip when the fall color is changing, especially changing so rapidly. So it's really tough to do on that. But on a winter trip to a place like Death Valley, which I'm probably not gonna be able to do this year, but those sort of trips where on one day to the next doesn't really make that big of a difference. Those are the trips where taking that day off really helps. And I did that on my trip earlier this year when I went to Death Valley. And I will say that really did help out quite a bit. And I was in the field for quite a while, and I had a good amount of energy on that trip. In the really long term, I want to buy a small travel trailer. Nothing big, something about as small as I can that has a shower on the inside, a kitchen on the inside, a clean space where I can, load film in there and get good rest in there. But on an off day, I can go in there and just kind of have some place to relax a little bit, because otherwise it's just me and my 4Runner, and the driver's seat of the 4Runner. It's comfortable and all that, but it's not the same as being able to just actually fully relax a little bit. Another thing too, in terms of lessons learned, has to do with the effect of the crowds and the vandalism and everything else on this trip. And a good analogy for this is my home office, my desk. It's just my computer on there, keyboard, mouse, scanner. That's it, that's on the desk. I don't like to have anything else on the computer desk. And me trying to work on a cluttered desk where there's piles of paper that are falling over and knocking things over, to me, that would just be absolute torture. I would not be able to do it. I'd have to clear off that desk completely, deal with all that before I can actually focus on the task at hand. And that's the best way I can describe of the effect of seeing the vandalism, the litter, the toilet paper left everywhere, even things such as stacking stones, which some people might not see a problem with, and I'll have a video on that topic a little bit later down the line. But that whole experience was like having this really messy desk, and then you guys sit there and be productive and creative and do all sorts of things, and it just kept taking me out of it. So it wasn't until I took the effort to go out and clean things up that it literally it was like a breath of fresh air. Just even for the selfish reasons of cleaning up, just for my own state of being out there. But certainly it's doing a very good service for other visitors, and also to help perhaps not encourage more of that poor behavior of people leaving more stuff because they see a litter there, so like, hey, I guess I can litter here. So that's definitely one of the takeaways, is that cleaning up an area will help you perhaps as much as it helps the location. And then the final lesson learned, if any of you watched the film reveal video, you'll see that I did not shoot any color negative film this year. And I think it's mostly because I was just being a little bit lazy. I really should have. Now, there weren't any scenes I photographed where color negative film would have made or break a shot. Made or break? No, we'll go with that. There weren't any situations where that would have made a shot work that otherwise wouldn't, because in those situations, the light just wasn't all that great to begin with. But I really do need to get in the habit of shooting more color negative film alongside the side film, because there's times when I'll mess up an exposure on side or something happens, but color negative film is very, very forgiving from that standpoint. So those are my takeaways from this year's trip: to eat more, get more calories so I don't run a calorie deficit. The fact that cleaning up areas, it really does help. And I really do need to make sure I shoot more color negative film. This Saturday's video is going to be my composition review, where I look at the photos from this trip and I get a little more in detail about the compositions and why I think that those ones work and sort of the decisions I made in the field. And then after that, I'll have a video where I talk about the digital photos I shot on this trip that I have not shared yet. And I did enjoy that as well. But I do want to thank everyone for watching, and we'll see you around next time.